Mela nilqakom magħna għal podcast ieħor ta' Sayan Cassar podcast. Illum ħajkonna magħna mistieden speċjali, huwa proprja Napletan imma jgħix l-Amerika. Dan huwa awtur jismu Mike Fiorito u ħareġ diversi kodba fosthom dawn il-ġiex kodba For All We Know, l-ewwel wieħed u UFO Symphonics. Mike Fiorito jitkellem ħafna fuq ir-relazzjoni bejn il-fenomenu tal-UFOs u mużika, l-spiritualità u anki consciousness. Naħseb tkun konverzazzjoni interessanti ħafna. Nispera li toġobkom.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Hi guys, today we're joined by our dear friend Mike Fiorito, an author whose work explores fascinating intersection of science fiction, spirituality and the UFO phenomena. Through his thought-provoking books and essays, Mike invites readers to reflect on the mysteries of consciousness, the universe and our place within it. His writing often blurs the lines between the personal and the cosmic, offering deep insight inspired by both imagination and experience. Mike, it's a real pleasure to welcome you on today's episode. Can you tell us a bit about your background and
Sure.
what initially sparked your interest in writing? And of course, what first drew you into the world of UFOs?
Well, Keith, thank you, first of all. Thank you very much for having me on. What a great honor, my brothers in Malta. And it's been great getting to know you. It just feels wonderful to have this kind of broad reach across the world, shaking hands. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you and your team. And it's been great to be interacting with the site as well. So thank you. So I'll just kind of give a bit of a background. I've been interested in science fiction as long as I could remember. It really started with mythology. I think my parents had a collection of mythology encyclopedias, like Greek mythology, and it just caught my imagination. I would say, maybe like others as well, I was interested in comic books first.
Nice.
I read comic books, Marvel comic books, DC comic books. But then I started to get interested in science fiction. Very early on, I started to read, I don't even remember some of the names of the books, fantasy, science fiction and fantasy. There were, lots of titles. There was a magazine called, I don't know if you recall it, it was called Omni Magazine.
No.
And it was about 1978 was its first publication.
Okay.
Ironically, it was put out by the same guy who put out Penthouse magazine.
Okay.
So Bob Guccione, who was, I believe, an American, but then lived in the UK. And it was a quality, beautiful magazine with great pictures, the preeminent science fiction writers of the day, Philip K. Dick, Ursula Le Guin, the list goes on, along with science fiction and science fact, and great illustrations. So I'm like 12 at that time. This is probably above my head, really, a little bit. But I rose to the level of reading that, really. And, I began writing. I've been writing since I could show you some funny scribbles that I have a lot of misspelled words. and always interested in the kind of philosophical,
Mm-hmm.
not science fiction as cowboys in space. That was never an appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was never really interested in the epic kind of some of the epic books, the trilogies, maybe with the exception of Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
I was always interested, like say, for example, Philip K. Dick, although that did come later, in the science fiction that questions reality, that makes you think about consciousness, who we are, identity. Philip K. Dick explores, the idea, is this a kind of simulation reality?
Yeah.
Is this a kind of, he was very deeply interested in philosophical and religious concepts. He considered himself a Gnostic, for example, Philip K. Dick. And now Gnostics kind of, and I would say, people in our world look to Philip K. Dick as a writer who's expressing some of the more modern ideas about UFOs. And I would say that I was always deeply interested in UFO art and the concept of UFOs, um, but in a different way. So I'll explain that. I don't know what your journey was like. I was interested in the SETI, the Search for
Yeah.
Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I was a big fan of Carl Sagan
Mm-hmm.
when I was younger. I met him in college, actually.
Oh.
And we all lined up to talk to Carl Sagan. And, people had these amazing questions. And I just had a stupid question about, when is your show going to come back on, public television, something. And his answer was something. Do you remember the way he spoke?
Yeah.
Yeah. Billions and billions of
Yes.
tiny syndicate programs dispersed throughout the universe. That's the way he spoke. And I
Yeah.
didn't hear a word he said. I just looked and said, Carl Sagan is speaking to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, subsequently there were books that were about the philosophy of SETI, and basically saying SETI kind of got it all wrong. It was sort of like the early uh, and really any period of human civilization, but we were looking for people who looked like us, who had the similar situation in terms of where they were distant from the star, distance from the star, the chemical composition, etc. And it sort of, I think it was important, but it was, now as I understand, it's probably completely wrong.
Yeah.
I would say what the real kickstart for me was, I've read Jeff Kripal's book, The Flip. So I had just finished writing a book called Falling from Trees, which was a collection of short stories. They were kind of speculative fiction. People had compared some of the stories to Philip K. Dick and to Jorge Borges, Italo Calvino.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the style that I was very much interested in. And I had finished that book. And as a writer, when I finish something, usually you basically become depressed. You're an artist.
Yep.
When you finish a body of work,
Yep.
you are spent. You've just kind of emptied it out, and then you go out into the world, and it's not like you're looking for cheers, but you're walking like a zombie
Yep.
into the world. And I'm looking for, as a writer, writing that triggers, that sort of kickstarts me and gets me thinking. So I picked up this book, The Flip. I don't think I read it right away. I probably, in a few months, I just sort of found it and picked it up. I have to say, and I've told Jeff Kripal this. I told him this recently because I was at a conference in Houston, Texas. So it was the Archives of the Impossible conference that Jeff Kripal is probably the brainchild of for. I said to Jeff, I blame it all on you. This is all your fault. Because after reading that book, I read many books by him.
Yeah.
I really went back and, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I think people in this community, we become obsessed. We go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
and
you mentioned mythology. Do you make a correlation between the ancient gods, Egyptian gods, Sumerian gods, with what we're seeing today?
Absolutely. Josh Cutchin, if you follow, I read, not completely, but I did a lot of, because it's a tome. It's a big book.
Mm-hmm.
But I bought his book, Fourth Wall Phantoms.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, I love what Josh has done with the topic. What Josh has done is he's saying, we live the myths in our lives.
Yeah.
So the myths aren't just a thing
Of
this
the
time
past.
ago. It is something that is continuous with the current time.
Yeah.
Also, that the myths aren't just made up things, that there's this relationship we have from, and I experienced something like this. I'll get back to the journey of the UFO stuff, how I kind of got there in
Mm-hmm.
the books. But just to say, I in my review that I wrote for Josh, I said that I had because Josh is writing about do what comes first, and he's asking the question, do we imagine something and then it becomes real?
Mm-hmm.
Does
Manifestation.
reality, right? And Eric Wargo has written about this in Time Loops, that sometimes there's retro causality.
Yeah.
And I know in my own life, when I look back right now, I'll give you a great example. I said to Jeff Kripal after I read his book, The Flip, I said, Jeff, I felt like I read your book, The Flip, before I wrote my book, Falling from Trees.
Mm-hmm.
And his response was, welcome to the club.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a common thing. People, you kind of feel that something triggered in something in you, but how could that be? Because you hadn't known it yet. And so there's this sort of dissolution of time.
Mm-hmm.
That time is not so much it's
Yeah.
circular.
Yeah. Not linear.
It's circular. Yeah. And so that's what I thought Josh did a great job of. Really, it's very scholarly, but it's very kind of folksy the way he wrote it too. It's very readable. It is a tome. It's a big book, but it's this relationship to, when I create my writing has really been, it's sort of like my passport to the cosmos.
Yeah.
And as I've been writing, I kind of look back and say, it's sort of, most of my life seems to have been building up to this, to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, my interest in science fiction, I studied philosophy undergrad and really continued studying philosophy. My interest in writing,
Mm-hmm.
my interest in spirituality, my interest in mythology,
Music.
music, right? And this whole sort of has culminated together in, it's as if I've been planning for this all the while,
Mm-hmm.
but wasn't aware of it. So I realize I'm here to talk about my book, but Josh and I are great friends, and I don't really care. I'm not out to, it's not like I'm a car salesman. I'm interested in the subject matter.
Yeah.
And what really interests me about this subject matter is it forces you to look broadly and deeply. So you can't just one trick pony this.
Yeah.
You have to look at philosophy. You have to look at psychology, Jungian psychology. You have to look at mythology. I'm not a scientist. I'm interested in science, and I'm interested in the science as it relates to, what science is telling us is the universe appears to be more like a song than a machine, first of all. And
universe. It's universe, one song. It's
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And as just going back to, what got me into this subject, I'm a writer. I've written across many subjects.
I have your
I've
books,
written for
Mike.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. See, I
Brilliant.
want you to notice something there, Keith,
Mm-hmm.
is if you look at the pictures, you'll see, and for all we know,
Mm-hmm.
the man is standing below the UFO in the beam of light. Now, I didn't plan this.
Yeah.
And when we look at, if we look at UFO symphonic, now the UFO is up inside the mind.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm trying to say, something that the UFO is psychic.
Yeah.
that's the important thing. So where Carl Sagan was looking in telescopes and looking with instruments and using this kind of older way, this older cosmology, the others might be right here.
Yeah.
You know, they're suffusing. A great example is I have a radio, you know, let's say this is a radio.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have all these stations going on.
And you're tuned in to one station. Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect. It doesn't mean that the other stations do not exist. It means that you are tuned in to that particular station. Yeah.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
And one way, you know, what I discovered, well, I think I've always known this, but music takes us out of our ego.
Mm-hmm.
So our everyday kind of reality contains us, as it should, because I can't do basic things if I can't focus. You know, Aldous Huxley said we have a filter system,
mm-hmm.
and that filter system, it kind of blocks off the doors of perception. Because if we were constantly, if the doors of perception were always open, our world would be filled with the fae people, fairies, you know, UFOs and ghosts, apparitions. It could be overwhelming.
Yeah,
it could be a kind of zoological, you know, preponderance of beings, you know, and everywhere. I mean, we experience that, Keith, as you and I know, when we are in an altered state. So when we're in an altered state, which is what music does to us, music puts us in an altered state. It deliteralizes. Mm-hmm. It takes us out of our ego. And now and I think the potential for what that communication is, I think music is a contact modality, but I think that's an extremely broad spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be contact with your emotions.
I don't know, Mike, if you're following about Jake Barber and what's happening with the Skywatcher team, mm-hmm. and what they're calling as the dog whistle.
Mm-hmm. I don't. Tell me more about that, please.
Okay. So, recently, Jake Barber, who's one of the latest whistleblowers.
Right, I know his testimony, but I don't. Okay. I haven't been watching the Skywalker stuff, so please tell me.
So basically, he leads a group of people, a team, the Skywatcher team, and basically what they're doing, they've been doing it for the past, I believe, 5 or 6 years, and they're into psionics. They call it psionics. Basically, it's mm-hmm. another term for, let's call it CE5 or human-initiated contact. Okay. Now, this team is actively doing these experiments by using CE5 methods, which mm-hmm. they call psionics, and with a technological tool. They're not mentioning what is this tool, but they're calling it a dog whistle, which emits sounds and attracts these UAPs. And what's fascinating is that, believe it or not, they have 100% success with it. In fact, Jake Barber and his team has made a very bold statement, in my opinion, saying that by the end of this year, 2025, they will be able to land one of these UAPs. In fact, I believe 2 days ago, they released their second episode on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube. And they released a lot of new videos. And they are classifying these UAPs into 9 categories, basically based on their shapes. And I mean, it's mind-blowing, and it's a very bold statement for me, that saying that by the end of this year they will land a UFO, because they're saying also that these objects, let's call them objects, okay, they're not just mechanical, but they can be sort of a spiritual, okay,
plasma,
plasma, which they can communicate with. It's almost like an artificial intelligence communicating with consciousness. And they are also stating that they are able to even maneuver and drive these, let's call them UAPs. I mean...
Wow, it's funny you say that, because I've been hearing, I watched Jake Barber's his conversation with Jesse Michaels, is it?
Yeah.
And I've seen him in I think he was on a few podcasts, and it was completely mind-blowing. I haven't watched Skywalker. I was confused because I thought it was Skywalker Ranch.
No,
and I just been busy with
Sky
Watchers.
Watchers.
Right. And I had, and people have said, have you seen it? Have you seen it? Now, it's interesting. I saw Whitley Strieber when I was just at the Archives conference.
I saw your photo.
And yeah. Nice, really nice guy.
Yeah.
And he asked me, and actually on his podcast, he said, can we use music to contact the visitors? That's his term.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't. So my answer to him was, like, I don't know if you can categorically expect contact. Okay. You know, if I use tarot, if I use the I Ching, if I use any tool, contact modality to do remote viewing or any kind of psychic work, can you ever guarantee it? So that was my response to him, is I don't know. So I'd be curious to know how they're doing this. I mean, there are things like hemisync. There are things like using hypnosis or using frequencies. There are certain frequencies. There are many frequencies that have different attributes. So there's the solfeggio frequency, the God frequency. Then there are other frequencies, and some have healing, some have meditative, some are for sleep, some are for kind of profound. The solfeggios, it's very kind of, you can't sleep with the solfeggio frequency, because it's sort of, very generating and vibrant.
This has been experimented with by the Robert Monroe Institute, by using the binaural beats to hemisync, to sync the left to hemisphere to the right hemisphere, by I believe it's 2 different frequencies, and your mind will resolve the difference in between, and you are synced, and you are able to astral project, remote travel, whatever.
Exactly. It puts you in a kind of hypnagogic state. Yep. And then from there, yes, you can remote view. And I mean, I would not say that I'm expert at it. I have experimented, but it can certainly launch you. You're in an altered state.
Yeah.
You're in and out of, Robert Monroe was having out-of-body experiences. Yeah. And interestingly, he was, his book, Journeys Out of Mind, he talks about, he encounters a being. So this is the same being, and he has a relationship with this being that seems to be, very knowledgeable, very wise, also has a sense of humor, kind of teases him a little, makes fun of him. And he has a message that we've heard before. Human beings need to, evolve, need to be more conscious of the earth, of the planet, more caring of the planet, of each other. It's funny because we hear this from
all the
others.
Time. Yeah. And so you said visitors. What is your idea about, are these really visiting, or are these crypto-terrestrials? Are they living in our planet? Are they here with us? Are they really visiting from other planets? I mean,
that's a good question. A good certainly there are different ideas that they've been here before we were. Is what you're saying. And they could be in the oceans. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Timothy Gaudet. He's the naval. He was the captain of
Gaudet. Yes.
He talks about the experience. Gaudet.
Tim Gaudet.
And I've seen him too. He's a very nice guy. He's very, very presidential in his demeanor. So he says, along with other other folks as well. They've been here longer than we have. I mean, I have my feeling is we really don't know. That's my personal opinion.
Of course.
I kind of feel that we are related to them. We are them on some level. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure. Um, so I sort of restrain from being so categorical. Some indigenous peoples, like Hopi people, say that when they see the orbs, it's the spirit of dead people,
Yeah, the departed. Yeah.
people of deceased.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I know that death has something to do with this. Though Ann Strieber has said, and other people have echoed that. I think what, we talked about altered states, hemisync, getting out of your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get out of your ego, you basically enter a bigger realm.
Mm-hmm.
You get out of your rational mind. It seems that the rational mind is too narrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's too binary. The mind that the collective unconscious, maybe you call it the Akashic records.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the ocean of being that we're this collective, in the telepathy tapes, they call this place where the autistic children,
Yep.
they call it the hill. They meet on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe this is where we meet. And like Philip K. Dick said, this reality, and not just Philip K. Dick, I mean, Buddhists have said, Hinduists have said, this
We're
reality is a
spiritual
kind of
beings having a human experience.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this thing, it's not that there's some reality to it. It's just not the whole story.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been saying, I don't know if you know, I broke my arm about over 2 months ago.
All right.
And
Cool.
so, it's an awful experience,
Of
but
course.
there's a point to this that, the human body, when you experience pain, it's very real.
Yeah.
It's very real. Now
Yeah.
it's not the whole story, and it's ephemeral. But if I kick someone between the legs,
Mm-hmm.
say,
I
is
mean,
that provisional?
yeah. I mean, that is very real.
It's very real. It's not the whole story.
Of
So,
course.
I think when we dream, we like dip our ladle into that bigger ocean of being, which is where the dead spirits, where the deceased spirits are, where the continuum of beings are. That's kind of how I feel. There's this, what Carl Sagan, what SETI never talked about is the psychic aspect of this.
Yeah.
There's something that we connect with, and I wonder, I'm using a metaphor, the deeper you go into the collective unconscious,
Yep.
into your psyche, that is the portal to out there.
Yep.
So this is, and I've explored that in both my books, For All We Know, and in UFO Symphonic. I mean, as you know from For All We Know, I kind of take you through this New York City
Yeah.
kid. It's not a memoir, but it's based on things that did occur.
Mm-hmm.
It is memoirish. I wanted it to read like that. I wanted it to be gritty. I wanted people to, this kid doesn't believe anything. He's a hard kid from the streets. He doesn't even know there's an ecology out there. He doesn't know that there's forests and this whole living Gaia, this whole other world. And so he goes through this. I wanted it to be these gated experiences where he has epiphanies. He's doubtful, he's distrustful, but he grows. And this arc of spiritual development. I mean, it is true that one of the most profound experiences I've ever had is a psychedelic experience.
All right.
Where I communicated with the soul of a tree, which was hugely profound. And of course, you're going to get, you will get giggles and you'll get other responses. But anyone that has had those experiences knows what I mean.
Yeah.
And if you just walk up to a tree and you put your hand on a tree, and you are receptive, you'll feel something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when your mind is opened, as in with a, psychedelic substance, plant, sacred plant, your mind, the doors of perception are flung wide open. And so what we talked about, the radio, you're not just tuned into one channel.
Yeah, you're open.
You're wide open, and the beings and the sentiences, they kind of swoop in and out, and you're just not seeing it at other times. So that's what that book was about. And for all we know, I kind of walk away and say, for all we know, we don't really know it all.
Yeah, true.
There's the deep mystery, and I think being receptive to the mystery, being humble.
I agree. Humble. Yep.
Yeah, very humble, and humble to what we don't know, and to hopefully that humility gives us compassion and gives us love. It increases our ability to love and to forgive.
Yep.
So that's where the spiritual aspect to me comes in. Is there's this sort of philosophical idea that this is perhaps a provisional reality. So don't get too attached to your stories.
Yeah.
And your, we often do. We get attached to especially anger. Anger is really attractive. It's juicy.
We're here to
but
learn.
When
this is a school. I mean,
right, exactly.
To grow, to evolve. And
exactly.
Maybe we come back in another lifetime. We come with a little bit of more knowledge, expand our Akashic records, and then we come back. Maybe someday we'll reach light. I mean, enlightenment. Which is finally, light is the symbol of knowledge, fire.
It's interesting because Darren King, exo-academian, he said at the conference that when the beings, when they operate at such a higher level of vibration, and so when we encounter them, sometimes there are burn marks that they leave. It could also be unsettling. Sometimes it's traumatic. It's trauma because we don't know what's happening. There's something occurring and it's jarring to our. We don't have a context for how these beings, the way that they may interact with us. And so, to your point, this raising your vibration level, raising your tune, your ability to be in tune with that vibration level, through meditation, through practices. There are ancient practices that, there are prayers, that chants. Wisdom cultures throughout the world have developed these things, and they've sort of been pushed aside by mainstream, mainstream technological civilizations. Although now I think that's beginning to change.
Yeah. I think so. I think we're in the cusp of the new. We are evolving into a new species. I mean, the spiritual has. People are rising up to the spiritual world, are opening their eyes, and you can feel it. I think we lost the connection with the spiritual world, and now we're back into that era that will finally put us into we call it what do we call it? Yes, okay, we can call it the new age. Maybe you can call it the new age. And people are learning that there's beyond this three-dimensional physical world, and people are waking up.
The Age of Aquarius.
The Age of Aquarius.
Remember the song?
Yeah, of course.
The Age of Aquarius. I mean, this materialism, this materialist, we have to look at. I think it's no wonder, since the Enlightenment period, the success of science, of mathematics. I mean, you can't deny the success of the building telescopes and building ships that could navigate the seas, and building, then building the war machines, building computers, and all of this sort of economic wealth that has grown from it.
Mm-hmm.
But at what cost? I mean, the cost is we're destroying the planet, we're polluting the planet.
Yeah.
Also, people feel polluted. I think people want nourishment. And now our science is saying, is kind of, even people like Michio Kaku and other scientists, Avi Loeb.
Avi Loeb, yeah.
And I mean, the quantum physicists that, Gary Nolan, who was there, by the way. I loved his little presentation. Basically saying, if the data doesn't fit the model, if the data doesn't fit the model, get a new model.
Yeah.
But the idea that now our science, and actually it's not new.
Yeah,
I mean, if you go back to the quantum physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, I have his books here. I mean, he wrote basically he was writing the Vedanta.
Mm-hmm.
He was so profoundly inspired by what he discovered. He sort of pushed that aside, and he's writing, this reality, kind of mimicking what I've said. When you plumb the depths of the atom, you don't find continuously small particles. You just get to sort of little charges, fields that seem to have frequencies.
Yeah.
There's music down at that level, and maybe this is what they're talking about, this dog whistle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to look into that.
It's very interesting. I mean, I would love to learn more about what is this dog whistle? What tones or tunes or music are they playing? I mean, what sort of technological thing is this? I mean, we spoke before, and I was very skeptic about the CE5 protocol in the past. In fact, we're discussing this, me and Mirko as well. Up to a year and a half ago, if you would tell me about CE5, I would tell you, I don't believe in this crap. But, I'm one of the admins of Contatju for Malta, and obviously the followers started to asking for a CE5 session. And I said, okay, I mean, there's no harm in trying, And I said, okay, we'll organize a Skywatch and a CE5 event. During our first CE5 event, we followed the protocol, and I mean, we managed to see 2 large orange orbs, and it was mind-blowing. The session was just finished. I had already packed my camera gear and everything, because the dew was coming down and everything. All my gear was wet, even my binoculars. And all of a sudden, while chatting with the group, I saw 1 orb, and I kept my cool, and I said, okay, before say anything, just wait. Then I saw the second one. And obviously there was a lot of commotion. People were, very surprised about what they were seeing. And it's strangely enough, this was our first one. And till now we already organized 5 C5 sessions. Out of these 5, 3 times we saw something. And you know how what scientists say, you need replication steps. So, but I always argue that when you're trying to replicate something that is depending on a third party, it's not like, if you have a robot, you can push a button, tell it to sleep or to sit, and it will sleep as many times you push the button. But if you have a dog or a cat and you tell it to sit, it's up to the dog to sit,
Right.
you know. So we are at the mercy of something else. But I mean, it's our fifth experiment. The sixth one is coming, I believe it's on the 19th of this month. And we already had 3 successful CA5s.
Incredible.
I mean, this
So,
is something...
That's amazing. Do you know James Iandoli? So engaging the phenomena.
James?
He has a podcast, and so he's long been interested in CE5.
Okay.
And actually, I know he had, and I just hadn't watched it yet, he had a panel discussing Skywatcher. So I need to reach out to him, but he has a lot of experience for a number of years, and I believe he's been involved in and maybe has led contact groups. So, it's interesting. You were doubtful. Of course, I think with this phenomena, we have to constantly reevaluate what our beliefs are.
Yeah.
I remember early on when I was a baby in this subject matter, it's just not too long ago, 5 years ago, something like that. The idea of Bigfoot or even fairies was it was a little bit on the fringe. And then you begin to say, well, I'm not sure. What do I know? And the walls kind of keep crumbling. It's like you're shedding skin,
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
as we go along.
It's like the Socratic, injunction. We don't know it all.
Yeah.
And the more we think we know, the less we know.
We have to stay humble. In fact, in my personal experience, if you had asked me 7 years ago what UFOs are, I would have told you extraterrestrials.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, I have developed this idea that these could be either remnants of ancient civilization living with us on this planet. It could be that they are our creators as well. The story of the Anunnakis and the Sumerian gods and the Nephilim. And when you study religious texts and angels and demons and the jinn in the Arabic tradition, I mean, fairies, the fae, okay, when you start joining the dots, then it starts making sense. And as you said before, this could be something that we are creating unconsciously, and we might have, we are living now. Obviously, this is I'm living now, this date, this time, but as you said, time is circular. So, I mean, I have already lived in the future, and I'm living in the past. It could be that is something like Dr. Michael Masters. It could be us from the future. It could be us from the past. I mean, who knows? As you said, we have to stay humble and learn. I mean, even this of the story of the Skywatcher team. Now they're calling with sound. Who told us up to a few months ago, let's say, that you can call these UAPs with sound. I mean, I would have giggled.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain music that I would have, someone asked me a question, what song would you play? And so I'd have to think about that.
Yeah.
There's a great story by, so I mentioned Jorge Borges. I mean, it depends on how some people might pronounce it. Circular Ruins. And so there's this story that there's a being he's bringing a being to life. And so this being that he's bringing to life, a tulpa. So he's summoning a being into life. And so we know about tulpas from, the Buddhist tradition and so on. And so when he brings this being to life, he kind of forges him into existence. And then he doesn't tell the being because he feels, well, if I tell him, he'll feel his life is deprecated, like he's not real. And so the story goes on, and then there's some kind of like a conflagration, like a great fire. And this being now, he sees he's walking towards, there's a fire consuming, but he notices that the flames aren't burning him. And then he realizes, I'm someone else's tulpa. And I think this metaphor, we are intertwined in these stories. And being imagined doesn't mean that you're less than.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you less than.
Yeah.
There's this sort of this mesh of existence, and we're all participant. So, I just thought that
you reminded me of Pinocchio.
Right.
And
yeah.
Pinocchio. Yeah. Coincidentally, Pinocchio comes. You're Italian. Occhio, eye.
Beautiful story.
Pinocchio,
right.
The pineal gland.
Oh, I thought it was wood. I thought
Pino.
Pine is
yes, pine is Pino, but Pinocchio, the third eye.
Interesting.
And if you read the story of Pinocchio, he's a wish, and Geppetto dreams of having a child. And he manufactures, creates him from a piece of wood, scrap wood. And if you read the story, it makes a lot of sense of what exactly you're saying.
Yeah. It's funny because I read the story to my son. He's 14 now. I read it to him, let's say when he was 4. I don't recall exactly. And it's a great story. And the Pinocchio, not the Disney story's cleaned up and he's goody good 2 shoes, but the Pinocchio is naughty. And his father, Geppetto, is kind of gives him a wallop. It's a different time, but it's raw. It's more believable. It's more like life. And yes, it is an interesting. But that's a great example of myths telling stories that become real,
blending
that
with
become
reality.
Stories, that become stories, that become real, and it's then you kind of can't put your finger on, well, where was the thing first? What happened? So it's interesting that you say that, because I loved that book. And
amazing.
I would, we should get rid of the Disney story because it's such a corruption of the real story.
We should get rid of Disney.
I'm with you.
Mike, have you ever had a personal experience with, UFOs, ghosts, something that changed the way how you look at things?
Yeah, I would say my modality of encounter has been through dreams.
Okay.
That experience that I talked about, the tree, I would say that's probably the most profound experience of my life. And then for all we know, that is the loop. When the character kind of realizes that tree experience, he realizes it when he's much older, is the pivotal moment of his spiritual awakening. And it was as profound. And I had the experience with a friend, and it was what they call intersubjective. So we both, this was a non-human intelligence, and it was deeply profound. And when we both pulled back, we were looking out a window. So we were looking out his window. We're smoking a cigarette, looking out a window. Of course, not too smart, right? You're looking out a window in a 2-story house. And we see the tree, and the tree begins to geometrically kind of propagate as things will. If you take a psychedelic substance, it began to kind of get frenetic and geometrically kind of fractals kind of increase. And then it sort of slowed down. I wasn't conscious of this at all. and it slowed down into this kind of hypnotic thing until I don't even know what happened. Just between it and me and my friend Paul, the everything dissolved, and we were sort of one with the tree, and I could feel the emotion of the tree. And Paul and I both, we drew trees. This was something for all of our lives. It's been something important to us. That's kind of inexplicable because, like all of this is like a dream, because we're in a dream.
We're in a dream. Yeah. What if,
we're in layers.
What if we die and we wake up? I mean,
exactly.
And that is not
and
the
I think
final.
It's a dissolution,
Yeah.
which is sort of like that story I was just saying, the circular ruins. You're sort of nested out of something. The other way that I've had encounters that have been very profound is through dreams. So and I detail them in For All We Know, and also in UFO Symphonic, where I frequently will have dreams where I say, wow, that's a UFO. Yeah. And there's other things, associated.
I've had a lot of similar dreams, and they're really profound. Yeah.
Very profound. Yeah. And, my friend, Kimberly Engels, who's a professor of philosophy, and she focuses on phenomenology. And she spoke at the Archives of the Impossible. And what she said is, let's because people are sending in their stories about contact. And she says, let's just focus first on the experience. Let's not talk about how the experience occurred, where it came from. Let's talk about the experience,
the result,
and then we can make other categorizations downstream. But let's focus just on what was the experience, what are the common elements, what are the elements in that experience. And as anyone who studies this topic, that dreaming is an important aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's a way that we contact the dead. It's a way we explore the deeper realms of ourselves. Consequently, the universe of experience. I had one dream where, and I wrote it down. So my dream notebook is over there, but I will write my dreams down, and I also I'll cut out things and sort of put them in my dream notebook. I had a dream where I was seeing there was this long string. It was flat, so it looked like a cigar kind of coming at me. And I see these sort of probes that shoot off. They look like halogen lamp lights. They shoot off, and as the thing approaches, I see it's a string of like a UFO, but different kinds of UFOs, maybe from different times. And among this horizontal looking string of things is a tree, a large, say, pine tree. Pine tree.
Pioneer.
On its side, which is interesting. Now, do you think of? I've just talked about the trees, right? Why was it a tree there? So and actually that's in For All We Know. That's one of the images that just struck me so profoundly. And it's ironic that you mentioned Pinocchio, which the etymology of that word. And I believe that I called it a pine tree.
All right.
It was an alpine tree.
Yeah.
It was a kind of mountain tree.
Joining the dots.
Exactly.
Always.
Yeah.
You learn new things. You encounter new stuff that sometimes we question ourselves if there is something out there and it's trying to communicate with us with symbols, with dreams, with new people that we meet. Because I strongly believe that everything happens for a reason. I don't believe in destiny, because I believe that we have choices that we make all the time. But I believe that we have what we call free will. And if there is a destination that I have to reach in my life, all the choices that I make will lead me either further to that destination or further away. So what I mean by this is that there is a plan, but this plan might not be fulfilled in this lifetime, but during our future, maybe, when I die and I, let's say, reincarnate, I might get there in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, we found each other through an impossible, basically impossible connections. And we found each other, and almost immediately it was like brothers. So, we were sharing some Italian, between us. And I liked what you said, that this thing, and I quote this in UFO Symphonic, that it communicates in symbols because that's the only way it can.
Yeah.
It's just not literal.
Numbers.
It's not literal.
Numbers
and
I don't
symbols
know, Mike,
and
if
images.
9-10 years ago, I was in a dark, let's say, stage of my life. Okay? And all of a sudden I started seeing repeated numbers. At that time I didn't know what they mean. And I was seeing 1111. Receive an email, 1111. Receive a message, 1111. I mean, and I was saying, look at the watch, 1111, coincidentally. And I was saying, okay, what's about this freaking 1111? And I was researching, and then I came across angel numbers. Okay, and then I started reading about synchronicities. And then when you read about synchronicities, there is a quote that says, synchronicity is God's way to remain anonymous. And that struck me. And I said, okay, why am I seeing these repeated numbers? All of a sudden, with those repeated numbers, I was noticing, that when I say something or really wish something or really want something, by walking towards it, obviously, because I always say that if you hang around a barber shop, sooner or later you'll have a haircut. I mean, you can't go away on the other side of the path that will never lead you to. By staying at home on the sofa watching TV, you will never get, on this podcast, on Contact UFO Malta. Right. So what happened is I started meeting people, like, for example, Sayan. I met Sayan just with a post on Facebook. I just commented, and he immediately sent me a message. And he said, would you like to be to join me for a podcast? And I said, yes, of course. And it was my first time talking to the public about UFOs. I wasn't shy. I mean, if you ask Sayan, the first thing he told me is, you can remain anonymous. I said, no. I want to break the stigma because, unfortunately, I've been victim of this taboo, this stigma. I've always talked about the supernatural, the paranormal stuff, ghosts, UFOs. I've been reading about UFOs since I was 9 years old. I mean, even my grandfather was researching into UFOs. Although he was very religious, he was researching into UFOs. So, throughout my life, everything led me to this path. And now, obviously, since 2 years ago, I'm involved also into Contact UFO Malta, which I'm not the founder. A friend of mine is the founder, and he invited me to become the admin. And obviously, most of the posts you see, I post them. Because I research every day, Michael. I mean, After work, the first thing I do is open my computer and research, reading books all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Same here.
step by step, I mean, maybe someday we'll meet in a UFOcon.
Yeah.
That is one
Or
of
I'll just come to
in
you.
my bucket list.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Or I'll just come to you.
Oh, wow.
You know,
That would be nice. That would be
if
nice.
that's possible.
Don't come in summer. It would be very busy.
Right.
And it's hot. I mean, sometimes it goes up to 38 degrees.
Yeah. Ferragosto. So in Italy, everybody leaves.
Yeah. Mike, future plans? Any new books coming out?
I'm working on something now that's kind of it's a fictional stories that try to tell, as opposed to a nonfiction book that talks about it in a kind of a research way, but to take my research and to turn it into stories that basically tell our stories in ways that maybe reach a broader audience, you hope. Okay. So that's what and also I want to make these comical. So these will have a comic element to them. That's what I'm doing now. I find them funny. I've written funny or comic stuff before, so I know I can do it. And this is what's gripping me. So I'm probably a year away from anything at this point because I'm at the hammering stage, at the chiseling and just painting the wood at this moment.
Nice. So we look forward to it.
Yeah, well, I can say thank you, Keith. It's been an amazing inspiration to have made your friendship and the group as well.
Same.
I just feel tremendous gratitude. So thank you for having me on. And
thank you so much.
Let's do this, just you and me, sometime too.
Yes, sure. Whenever you want. I mean, I'm always there. Just message me and we can call. No worries.
I will. Thank you so much,
Mike.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Have a great day. I know it's late
Same
there.
to you, my
we'll
friend.
Talk soon.
Same to you. What time is?
God bless.
What time is?
It's only 2:00 here.
Wow. 2:00 in the afternoon.
Correct. 2 p.m.
Right.
Yeah. And you? What time is it?
8 o'clock.
Yeah. Well,
6 hours difference.
Go enjoy dinner, and we'll speak soon.
Same to you. Thanks a lot.
Take care, brother. Ci vediamo.
See you. Ci vediamo.
Bye.
Rock and roll.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.